Good morning, everyone. Or really, good afternoon. Today is Monday, January 26th, and we are here to do a session preview of the 2026 short session. My name is Alice Morrison. I am the co-executive director of Friends of Family Farmers, and I am also the lead of our advocacy program. And I am so glad that you all are here today, and those of you watching the recording in the future, to hear about a few of the priorities that FoFF is going to be following during the short session at the Oregon Legislature. So I think that first things first, we're going to talk a little bit about, whoops, about the session timeline, do a little overview there. Because it's a short session, things are crunched. It is very the pace is breakneck, if I can use that expression. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the session overview. Although we are in a short session, which lasts about 35 days here in Oregon, we're on a biennial calendar. Short sessions are supposedly for fixing budget things, and that is something we're going to talk about today. But it is a time when usually people associate it with tying up loose ends and fixing budgets. But we are also seeing some interesting concepts being brought back, interesting concepts, some good, some bad, and some new, but rarely new gigantic things introduced during the short session. But even though it is a 35-day short session, we still will be following all of these steps. So all of the steps in the legislative process will be just squeezed into that smaller time frame, which means that when you are thinking about your advocacy with FoFF, you might be asked to do things with a very, very quick turnaround during this short session. So something to think about. And thank you all for your patience with all of the things that we talk to you about. But when these deadlines come up, when hearings are scheduled in a long session and in normal times, they're only required to give us 48 hours notice or 2 business days. So we may ask you to attend a hearing on very short notice. When they suspend rules, we could have as little as 1 day notice for things to get scheduled. So just heads up on that as we go into the short session. Just want to set expectations and make sure everyone knows that if we have more notice, we will give you more notice, but we want to make sure that nobody misses an opportunity to participate in something. So we will be sending out things as they come in. All right, so we're going to look at the session calendar briefly, and you all can still see the OLIS screen here. Good. Okay. So here we are in January 26th. We had legislative days a couple weeks ago. And oh, just to go back a little bit, LC drop deadline was the date where all legislators got back their legislative concept draft from the legislative councils. And we honestly, we thought that the bills would be up on OLIS by now. They are not. So just still wanted to flag that everything we're talking about today is a legislative concept, not a bill. Because those bills have not been loaded into OLIS yet. We scheduled this thinking that they would have been by now and we would be giving you bill numbers, but everyone's doing the best they can, I guess. And so when we talk about LC numbers, those are going to change when they become bills. So I know that can be confusing, and we'll make sure to at least for the first part of the session include the LC number to make sure you know that those are the same concepts. Okay, so as we go into February, the session officially starts on Monday, February 2nd. Woohoo! That is coming up quick. And then we will get another revenue forecast on the 4th, which will set the tone for the budget discussions that we're going to go into. We're going to talk about budget reduction packages later in this presentation. And there is a sign-on letter that FoFF put out that we would love for everyone to take a look at with our priorities. Then we get very quickly into deadlines. So the post-work session deadline is 1 week from the beginning of session. So for the first chamber, That means by February 9th, every bill that is going to be entertained during the session must have a work session posted, well, a hearing and work session, but has to have a work session scheduled and posted by February 9th. So that's kind of the first opportunity for a bill that we're working on to bite the dust. But then that must be completed and voted upon by the first chamber deadline on February 16th. So those dates do come up really quickly. And then turning it around with even less time, the post work session deadline for the second chamber is February 20th. So just 4 days after that deadline, you're gonna have to see those on the committee agendas already. And the good thing about that is that we should know what's coming and what's dead and what's not pretty quickly. And then the second chamber deadline to have that work session completed and the committee vote done is the 26th of February. So very tight turnarounds, especially between the first session or the first chamber deadlines and the second chamber deadlines. And then, of course, we go into March. The first week of March is for floor sessions and those rules and ways and means committees that are not subject to those first and second chamber deadlines. And then the last day of the session, the sine die, is on the 8th. So everything by March 9th, everything will be done. So we can all just dive in and no way out but through the very breakneck pace of the session here. So just wanted to share that calendar with everyone so we know what we're looking at. But yeah, some dates to be really aware of are these. Here, let me go full screen again. There we go. The first chamber deadline is the 16th, and the second chamber deadline is the 26th, and the sine die is the 8th. So we will probably be putting out lots of action alerts leading up to those deadlines to make sure that if there are things that we either really need to make it through or really need to have not make it through, that you all have the opportunity to raise those concerns and participate to the fullest extent during this really crunched timeline. All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is farm stands. Surprise! So this is an issue that I know many of you have been following, and some of you on the call have been involved in various ways. There was a bill in 2025, I believe it was HB 3133, that was brought by the Oregon Property Owners Association to expand the definition of farm stand quite a bit. And that bill resulted in a legislative working group hosted by the co-chairs of the House Ag Committee. So Reps Helm and Owens decided that, hey, we're not going to have this debate in the committee. We're going to have it in the legislative working group. And they invited FoFF and Thousand Friends and Oregon Farm Bureau and the Property Owners Association, and the governor's office was there, and several other stakeholders were present. DLCD, the agency that gives guidance to the counties about how these things are applied. Many county planners were involved. And the conclusion of that legislative working group is that, oh, well, maybe there are things that can be solved in rules. And so then it was put to a rulemaking last summer. DLCD convened a rulemaking advisory committee. I was a member of that rulemaking advisory committee. Again, Thousand Friends, Oregon Farm Bureau, the Oregon Property Owners Association, several farm stand operators were also present on that committee. I think Peter's on the call. Hi, Peter. Peter was on the committee. And that rulemaking advisory committee and the whole rulemaking process kind of went up in flames when there was a social media campaign to highlight some of the things that folks were very upset about on the interpretation of the draft rules that was put out. We were in favor of some of the things in those draft rules. We did have big problems with some of the things in the draft rules. We put out a comprehensive kind of line by line assessment of what FoFF thinks of the things that were discussed there, but at the end of the day, that rulemaking process broke down and was ended by the governor's office. So this farm stand bill that's coming forward is the continuation of that process. It is something that FoFF was not consulted on during its creation. So we have seen the LC and let me go to the next slide. It's going to be LC 81. That will not be the bill number. So we'll have to tell you the bill number when that comes out. But things that from the rulemaking that we're looking out for that we want included, we want clarity on farm direct producer process exemption products, that those are processed agricultural products, not incidentals. That was something that we discussed over and over again during the rulemaking. People generally agreed that yes, if you are going through all of the rigmarole that goes into farm direct, you're following all of those rules, that is a processed agricultural product, not an incidental product. That had not been clearly delineated, and all counties were not necessarily interpreting it that way when we went through the rulemaking process. So we really want to get clarity on that. That's one thing. Second thing, that we want educational events to be included as an allowable event type at farm stands. You should be able to give a farm tour, host a workshop on your farm practices, a thing that you grow, and to be able to teach people about your farm. That's an acceptable fee-based event. An exemption for the simplest form is something that we talked about during the rulemaking process, that what we're talking about when we say the simplest form of farm stand is a seasonal operation of a temporary structure that you're only selling your product and or doing a U-pick. So we want to make sure that if you have, an open air, non-enclosed thing at the end of your driveway and it just says like eggs, $8 a dozen, or like you're putting out your honesty box for your zucchini or what have you, it's your product, you grew it, it is the simplest form. I don't think you should have to approach the county for a permit for that at all. That is what we're talking about when there is that is a farm use. You grew that product on your farm. You are selling it. You're not doing any of the other things. You're not selling other aggregated product from the local agricultural area. You're not doing events, all of those things. We don't need the counties to be involved with that simplest form of farm stand. And folks should just know that they are allowed to operate legally and they don't need to seek a permit. That is something that we discussed in the rulemaking that was not present in the draft that I've seen. And I think that we just need to make that explicitly clear and set a baseline across the thing that is not something that we're trying to prohibit. And it is not something that counties need to be involved in at all. Because we want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to sell their farm product in the simplest form. And we are looking for a limitation on incidental goods. We do not want a limitless incidental goods future in farm stands. The point of a farm stand is to sell farm product. That is why it is considered a sub 1 use. So making sure that these are the principles that we are operating on as we go into it. I'm not going to show you the text of the LC because it's changed dramatically between drafts, and I know that there's an amendment in the works. So as soon as it gets posted, we will post our markup, but I don't want to get people riled up on things that are going to change next week. So things that we do not want, further limitations on who can have a farm stand. If you are growing your product, you should be allowed to sell your product on your farm. We don't want this to turn into only the largest operations or most productive operations are allowed to have a farm stand, because we have to have a litmus test because we're allowing people to do all of these other event types or things through the farm stand. So we need to make sure they're legitimate farm operations. The whole point of a farm stand is to sell your farm product. So we don't want anyone to be not allowed to sell their farm product in their farm stand in order for other people to have many, many types of events that are not currently based in farm stand law. We are not in favor of having unlimited agritourism events. The type of events that are currently permitted through agritourism processes, which means that they are not related to promoting the product of the farm, or they are not an educational event based on the practices of the farm, because those are two things that we have been working on with the rulemaking and the legislative working group before. Those are things that we do agree should be affiliated with farm stands. But agritourism events, which are tourism events not related to the production of the farm that just happen to be hosted on the farm, We are not in favor of unlimited agritourism events in association with a farm stand permit. That's why there is an agritourism permitting process. We also just want to say that all of the tourism activities that go on through a farm stand, reasons people come, events, that sort of thing, for FoFF to see it as a farm stand relevant thing, it has to be related to the production of the farm. And that's something that will come through in all of our future comments on this topic, and making sure that the reason people have farm stands is to highlight their farm production, to sell their product, and to get people invested in the production that they're doing. And so just making sure that that is the baseline that FoFF is working with as we move forward. Just wanted to put out those principles that we will be adhering to in the farm stand conversation. And I was really thinking that we would have something that had been filed and we would have a bill number that I could share with you by this time, but we do not have something concrete in OLIS, and so I don't want to share things that might change within a day. But as soon as we have something official, I will send it out to our lists. Yes. The draft that we have seen is controversial. There are a lot of people who were not consulted in its drafting, and we anticipate it will change greatly. Amendments are already in the works, and there's a real possibility that this will not be settled this session because some of the changes that are being proposed are expansive. Not expensive, expansive, just huge. Some of them could be expensive depending on how you interpret them, but it's a really wide-reaching legislative concept, and I anticipate it will change greatly if it moves forward. But we are monitoring this very closely, and FoFF is definitely not leaning away from this topic. So look out for many updates on the farm stand legislation from us. Okay, another land use thing. Wonderful. Well, this is actually very bad. So, not wonderful at all. LC 237 is a proposal. I don't have a bill number, but as soon as we do have a bill number, we will tell it to you. Is a proposal that would circumvent existing land rezoning practices, cut off all public input in this process, and simply annex 1,700 acres into Hillsborough's urban growth boundary for specifically industrial use. This is currently high value farmland. We need to make sure that there are that the processes in place for public input are respected and adhered to, and that there are rules about how we rezone our agricultural lands, because agricultural land, especially high value soils and high value agricultural land in proximity to places like Washington County and Hillsborough, where there are markets for people, that's really important that we have farmland adjacent to places where people are looking to buy farm product. So that's one of the main points of our current land use system here in Oregon, that we have farmland and rural land close to urban centers via our urban growth boundaries. And to circumvent the process that is being proposed here, one, it goes against our values in terms of preserving farmland for productive use, and two, the community is outraged and it's not being included in this conversation. And Washington, as you can see here, Washington County farmers and residents have been very, very vocal about they don't want this to happen. They're not interested in rezoning this agricultural land into industrial use. They've seen these programs or these propositions come forward before. The community is not behind this, and they do not want to have their agricultural lands rezoned for industrial use. And in this case, we have reason to believe that this is data centers and chip manufacturing that is wanting to use this industrial land. And just for reference, also, the water rights that go along with that agricultural land would also have to be converted into industrial use, so that it's not like there's more water that will be available to farmers, because water rights go along with the land, not with the person or the use. And so that would have to also be converted. And there's a lot of resource use that goes into this proposal that is very worrisome. So, our concerns generally here, we do not want farmland to be seen as a quote untapped resource. It is being tapped. It's being used for agricultural production. Agriculture is the second largest economic sector in Oregon. It is huge industry. We are an agricultural state. We do have a different agricultural economy than other agricultural states. We have more diversified farming. We have more specialty crop farming. Specialty crop for the USDA, as you know, is fruits and vegetables and things that are not grains and commodity oriented. But just because it is not viewed as like the standard of American commodity agriculture does not mean it is an untapped resource and can be readily converted. We want also to make sure that the process for these rezoning type scenarios and annexations is respected. And in this case, it is not being respected because there's so much community opposition to what's happening here. It is wrong for the agricultural community, rural community, any community to be boxed out of the process because they disagree with what's going on. To go to the legislature for this and go around the community is shameful. So we want to make sure that the community has a say in how their natural resources are going to be used. These are folks who will have to bear the brunt of any water contamination, air pollution, all of those kinds of things. And we don't want this to set a dangerous precedent for future action where if there's a business opportunity for agricultural land, that there could be a legislative solution to vast community opposition and an inability to go through the normal process. So we're very concerned about this and are joining in coalition with many other groups who are also concerned about this particular proposal. This is a singular place-based proposal. It is about one 1,700-acre annexation in Hillsborough. It's not changing the way that things are approached overall, but if this goes through, it could be used as a precedent to do similar things in other places in the state. All right. Oh, I meant to change that. I thought I changed that photo. Sorry, y'all. But the next thing that's happening, as I alluded to during the introduction, there's a revenue forecast that's happening in the first week of session. And that is incredibly important because leading up to session, if you all have been following some of the pre-work that's been happening before the first of the year and through legislative days in November of last year, the governor has asked state agencies to present reduction packages of 5% of their total budgets. And those, we have met with several agencies to discuss their reduction packages and express concern about things that are listed there because of, their programs that are widely used by the farmers that FoFF represents and our community and could have big impacts in other natural resource usage. And we asked these agencies, how did you create these lists? Like, why are certain things listed here? And what I was told by certain agencies was that these were presented to them. They had very little time to put these lists together, and they were presented to them as a one-time temporary budget reduction for only the remainder of this biennium. So that's what they were told to put together for the second half of the 25 to 27 biennium. And that is not necessarily the same tenor that's being struck by legislators when they talk about these. There is a chance that these budget reductions are going to be framed as a roadmap for permanent reductions. And as you all are probably aware, once we lose a staff position or a grant program or a field office, it is going to take a long time for us to build the political will to reinstate that. Once it's gone, it's much harder to get back. So although the agencies originally developed these lists as a temporary reduction for the rest of the 25 to 27 biennium, we want to make sure that these are not considered cuttable things for the 27 to 29 biennium. Because a lot of these programs, we had to fight pretty hard to get instated in the first place. So we would really like to see these things continue. So we have a sign-on letter that is going around, and I'll put this link in the chat, and then I will tell you what's on the letter also. So, um, we looked at the resource agency budgets and identified some areas in ODA. In general, all of the agencies that I spoke to are really interested in preserving their staff and expertise, which makes a lot of sense because they want to make sure that they're not having to turn over positions, put programs on hold, and stop service provision. So the things that are listed here are some vacancy savings. So these are positions that are currently vacant, and vacancy savings means that they're just not going to hire them until the vacancy savings is lifted. So we see vacancy savings listed in the Ag Water Quality Program. We see vacancy savings listed in organics positions. And these two are both very worrying. So the Ag Water Quality Program is a program that applies to every farm and agricultural producer in the state. Everyone is required to comply with the Ag Water Quality Program. You don't need to receive a permit to do so. You are just held to those standards. It's a lot about manure management, about nutrient discharge, and all of those things. So if you have animals, especially, or if you are applying fertility to a large amount of cropland, thinking about the Ag Water Quality Program is something you probably already do. They are also responsible for a lot of the remediation programs that are ag related in places where there is documented groundwater contamination, including groundwater management areas, including the largest groundwater management area in the state and most serious, the Lower Umatilla Basin Groundwater Management Area, which is the home to the largest area in the state and has been a real problem. It is declared an emergency. The EPA is involved. The governor has made it very clear that she wants to see movement here. She's said many times that she would like to see movement here. And those communities in northeastern Oregon around Boardman, they are facing nitrate pollution that can cause a myriad of human health concerns, pregnancy loss, birth defects, multiple types of cancer, just all kinds of horrible things that are happening to this community and have been for decades because of the nitrate contamination here. The Ag Water Quality Program also recently released it's still in it's like in the last stage of rulemaking. They also released their mitigation plan for the Lebguama and how much effort they're going to have to do to make sure that people are in compliance to clean up this problem area, which is literally killing people in Oregon. And now we are using their positions as vacancy savings. There is a mismatch of urgency here. So we want to make sure that this program is able to operate to the highest standard that it can. Many of the community groups involved in who are representing people in the Lebguama and who are based in the Lebguama are already saying that it's not going far enough already. And if we have vacancy savings and they don't have the staff to do this, then these folks who are having this water quality emergency are going to suffer. So that is a huge problem. We don't want to further hamstring this program and make it harder for them to do their job. There's also if the Ag Water Quality Program does not have the capacity to do the monitoring and education and things like that they are required to do, there's a potential for an additional water contamination to happen during this time when these positions are held vacant. And then the state is going to have to pay to clean it up like they did with the Lost Valley disaster in 2018. So we really don't want to create more problems for the state to clean up. It'll be so much more expensive and it'll be another diversion of state funds to clean up the problems. We should just staff the programs that prevent the problems in the first place. Also, vacancy savings in organics positions. ODA is an organic certifier. They have an organic certification program. There is a manager position and there's some technical assistance positions that are listed as vacancy savings in the organics department. We don't want our farmers to have to wait longer or have more red tape to to go through the process to re-up their certifications or to get them for the first time so that they can sell into the markets that they've been doing the practices. They are building their business around having the premium that having the certification gives you on your product. And to have further red tape and further delays is holding back a lot of Oregon farmers. And so we would not let, and we also know that this is a program that we've had to fight very hard to get staffed adequately. We've worked on this for years, and we do not want to lose ground on this program. Also, the Farm to School Infrastructure and Equipment Grant, which FoFF has been a long supporter of, this grant program is a way for farmers who are looking to make the leap into institutional sales and to sell into the Farm to School program. This is a grant fund that they can apply for to get either post-harvest handling or packaging or food safety equipment so that they can meet that standard, or to increase production, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I know for sure post-harvest handling, but to make sure that they are able to meet those standards and get their product into the format that a school district can use so that they can sell into those institutional markets. This is a really, really vital project for us to both make local food more accessible in our schools and to provide a pathway for our small scale farmers to become institutional clients and be able to sell into not only the school system, but in the future, they could use this infrastructure to do restaurants, hospitals, business parks, cafeterias, all of those kinds of things that would assure them guaranteed income through contracts that would allow us to sustain a more diversified ag of the middle sphere. And this is a really important program. And right now, what's being proposed is to release the funds for the rest of the biennium and not have another round of this grant program until the 27 to 29 biennium. And we don't want this to be a roadmap to not allocating any funds to this program in the future. It is a very important program, and it also is a good return on investment for the state. So we want to emphasize that. We also would like to highlight there are several cuts in the pesticide stewardship and monitoring partnerships and programs that are in ODA. There's the dissolution of an MOU between ODA and DEQ, the Department of Ag and the Department of Environmental Quality, for monitoring and stewardship of pesticide programs. A lot of our farmers, even if they don't use things that are chemicals that are governed by this program, they have experience with them. They have neighbors who use them. They have people who they know who are farm workers who are pesticide applicator certified. It also people who with pesticide application certifications go beyond farms. It's people who work in park systems. It's people who work for school districts. There's lots and lots of different ways that the pesticide application certifications get used in our state. And we would like to express concern about seeing the MOU with the Department of Environmental Quality be dissolved, as well as several programs within that sphere being reduced at once. We just want to make sure that we're not creating a future like with the Ag Water Quality Program, where we're creating the potential for something to happen that we will have to clean up and will take much, much longer to repair the damage than it would if we just prevented it in the first place. And it will cause a lot more harm than if we were able to keep these positions and these programs at their current level. So thinking about that, and also that's a good way of framing the way that we're thinking about these Natural Resource Agency budget cuts is not only paying attention to the specific line items in each agency's budget, but the way that they're going to interact when we cut multiple programs across different agencies. There's already too much siloing in our state agencies, and we want to make sure that if we're cutting programs that do have connections to other agencies, that they're not relying on resources that are being cut in a different agency to fill the gap that they're leaving behind. We also would like to highlight that in the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board budget, that the Oregon Ag Heritage Program is slated to have some reductions in both the first half and second half of their proposed 5% cut. This is really disappointing to see because Oregon is far behind many other states in the nation and many other states on the West Coast in farmland preservation. These are funds that already have projects associated with them. There are people who are waiting for these matching funds to draw down federal farmland protection funds from the ASEP program and similar programs that help with conservation easements. And these are funds that already are under allocated, in our opinion, for farmland preservation, and we're seeing cuts across the board to this program. We would not like to see these programs maintain these cuts into 27-29 biennium and are paying attention to make sure that this program is funded at a level that will keep it viable. It is definitely not the only tool in the farmland preservation toolbox, but it is a very important one. And conservation easements and working lands easements are something that is out of reach for many, many people without this type of cost matching that the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program can offer. A big one that we would like to highlight is not a natural resource agency, but in the HEC budget, the higher education budget, Oregon State University, their statewide programs, including extension, are seeing outsized cuts more than a 5% cut. So they're proposing cuts in the statewide programs, especially extension services, in order to offset costs in other places. So we're looking at almost an 8% reduction in the budget to the extension and statewides. And what we are really, really concerned about is that that will translate to closing of field offices or reduction in staff. And these community institutions are so important to the people that we serve because these are the front lines of any environmental or stewardship concern. Oregon State Extension offices are really, really important for community. They are not an enforcement agency. They are a safe place for someone to come and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I need to fix it. And that is how a lot of people get connected to other programs in the state. It is the first line of defense against environmental problems on working lands because that is a trusted community partner that you can go to and you can say, this is happening. How do I stop it? And you're not in fear of enforcement action while you're trying to remediate the situation. And they operate so many wonderful, wonderful community-based programs that prevent contamination in the first place. Things that we don't necessarily think about. Like they offer, like in the Living on the Land series that OSU Extension offices offer, they talk about maintaining your septic system, which is not only important for agricultural landholders, but rural landholders in general, and plays a huge part in our water quality. And that has an overflow effect into water quality for ag landholders who are, drawing from those aquifers. And if there is groundwater contamination from unmaintained or broken septic systems out in rural areas, that's the first line of defense is often the extension office. They also offer water testing in places like where I live, the Southern Willamette Valley groundwater management area. I take my well water to the extension office in Lynn County for nitrate testing. And that's how people are getting frontline information. And to have these the small farms program and the extension programs reduced, or possibly losing staff, possibly losing field offices, that is a blow that our rural communities will not recover from for decades if we have to reestablish those funding sources and reestablish those community resources. We are joining together with lots and lots of other people who love extension to maintain that those services are vital and needed and a good investment. And we will make sure that they hear us when we say that. So the last thing that I wanted to highlight is the Oregon Water Resources Department. They are proposing a reduction in the water measurement cost share program. And FoFF, as you know, was heavily involved in passing HB 3372 in 2025 to help folks use their commercial water allocation from their domestic well exemption to grow food for sale on a half acre. So you're allowed to use 3,000 of your 5,000 gallon commercial allocation to grow food on a half acre. That's a law that went into effect January 1st. FoFF was very involved in passing it. We're really, really proud of that legislation. And that does not require measurement, but we are always encourage folks to voluntarily measure their water usage so you know if your system is going over that limit. You know if your system has a leak. You know if you are applying what you think you're applying to your plants. It can help you with agronomics. It can help you maintain your water system, all of that kind of thing. The water measurement cost share program helps to pay up to 75% of the cost of a water measurement device, and is something that is a really wonderful way for folks to get those measurement devices if they want to have them and they can't afford them. So that right now is being backfilled with some remaining federal funds. Those federal funds are not going to be available next year. So we need to make sure that that is a temporary reduction, because that is it's a public good to Oregon to have people have more control over and visibility on their water usage and management. So we don't want to take that away from the folks who would otherwise not be able to use a measurement device and be assured of their water usage. So those are the things that we are highlighting the most in our budget letter. I put that link in the chat, and you can sign on to that budget letter as a farmer, a farm service agent, a community partner, someone who cares about this, a food and farm business owner. Maybe you are a food manufacturer who buys local food, who cares about these things. And we would love to have anyone and everyone sign on to that letter. You can indicate where you fit in the food system during the sign-on process. There's like multiple choice things. So we will list you in your appropriate category. And that we are looking for that sign-on to be completed by the end of the first week of session, so the end of next week. So please do not delay. Help us preserve our budget programs right now. And that brings us also to my next thing that I have to ask you. So, we are also, because it's a short session year, we are starting our 27 to 29 priority setting process. So I think many of you on the call probably participated in this when we did it again in 2024, but our statewide survey is open in English and in Spanish. I will put those links in the chat as well. And this is where we get all of the information about what we're going to be bringing to the legislature and where program offerings can expand to meet the needs of you all, the people that we serve, in the next biennium. So the survey is open now. Please take it. It's open until the end of March, so no rush right now, but there will be a rush later, so keep it on your radar. Another thing is the other half of that is our farmer focus groups. So we are currently recruiting for our farmer focus groups. We used to do this as a regional approach, and because we have had the same top issues in every region of the state for the last 10-ish years, we decided to change to a topic-based approach this year. We're piloting a new approach so that folks can talk about the topics that are the most vital to them and their farms. So we are doing these at the end of February and the beginning of March. The first one is going to be climate change, mitigation, adaptation, impacts of climate change, all of those kinds of things. Then land access and land use, then agritourism and diversifying income streams, then all things water. I know that's a big one. And then workforce concerns, then capital access, then industrialization and fair competition, specifically covering canola and CAFO regulation, if you all are aware of our ongoing campaigns in those areas. And then the last one we are reserving for, quote, emerging issues. So if something's identified through the survey by that point that we did not know we needed to have a focus group on, we will identify that focus group at least 1 week in advance. Or if we have an overflow of people from one of these topics who it fills up and we really need to have a second one on that topic, that we could use our emerging issues topic for that date. All right, I'm going to stop the recording